Hey, today I just wanted to do a little prediction, I suppose, of film overall and of what's to come in media and entertainment. As you probably know because you've read the title. I always have to say that. I just feel like an idiot, like I'm saying it for the first time and you're supposed to be shocked at like the announcement of what I'm going to say. But guess what? The title's there. And if you're here, if you've made it here onto this site and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to assume you can read. Okay, I'm going to stop being a smartass now. So I think that the future of entertainment is in streaming services. But more specifically, I'm not talking about Netflix, or in Australia we've got Stan, or you're in America, HBO Max and Hulu or whatever. I'm not talking about your Amazon Primes, which we both have. I'm not talking about other things like that. No, I'm talking about more things like Shudder, a horror streaming service. I think that we're going to see more and more platforms that are like that. I think that we're going to one day probably get, you know, like a sci-fi one at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a comedy one or something. Maybe I would be surprised by that because comedies aren't the most financially successful movies like they were back in the day. But I do think that, yeah, this is pretty much where I think streaming is going. I think that it's gonna start being more about what platform you're on. It's gonna be more curated to specific fans of things. I'm sure Netflix is still going to exist and be very, very successful and all that kind of stuff, unless they produce more movies like that Cuties thing and everyone decides to cancel and boycott and whatever. Be careful, Netflix. Stop doing that. But beyond that, and references that are going to be dated very, very quickly because nobody's going to remember or talk about that movie soon enough. Let's stick to talking about the curated streaming service future in which I think we're headed. So, relevant to this, but a little irrelevant to this, but the thing that started to get me thinking about it is recently, if you haven't heard, if you're not into gaming or anything, Xbox, the company of Xbox or Microsoft or whatever, bought Bethesda, a game developing company, which also branches out to like a few other different ones and all that kind of stuff. I don't know fully super well what IPs belong to what and all this kind of stuff, but I do know Bethesda, and I do know that they make Fallout, one of my favorite franchises of all time, and Skyrim as well, if you're into that, and other things where they don't make it, but they like distribute, or whatever the word is when it comes to games. Stuff like Doom and Doom Eternal and Wolfenstein, a few other things, pretty popular things. And so with that whole thing, it's like this big bidding war kind of thing, I guess, going on now between Sony and Xbox, and there's just this whole thing going on with all that kind of stuff. But I watched a video by a channel called Gameranks talking about this topic because I was wondering what the hell this means. Does it mean all the games are going to be exclusive and I have to get an Xbox to play the next Fallout game? Because if so, fuck, Xbox might have just won this console war or whatever, especially with Gamepass and all that kind of stuff. But the focus of that Gameranks video that I was talking about kind of proposed this idea that he thinks that the future of games is streaming, just like it has been for movies. He thinks that games are going to go in that very direction where this isn't even a thing where, you know, Xbox is trying to get all of the good properties and be like, haha, fuck you Sony, I own them all. No, they're more trying to change the entire game, just change the system. They're trying to make it so that the exclusives aren't even really a necessity anymore. It's more about being a service rather than just being a gaming platform where different games and developers and stuff can collaborate with them. They're more starting to be a bit more, I think they're maybe eyeing like Disney, and they're like, let's kind of shake things up. Let's own a bunch of things. I feel like they're trying to head into like a Disney/Netflix mentality when it comes to the business behind their games, and I think that is interesting, and I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it could be a good thing. But point is, streaming, that is where they are headed with things like Gamepass, which is basically Netflix for games. It's going to be so that people don't have to buy games anymore. They're just going to have them. Like, I'm pretty sure the next Halo that's coming out, if you are going to have an Xbox when that comes out and you have Game Pass, you basically get to have that game. They've been experimenting with this idea for a while as well. With the Outer Worlds that came out last year, I got that essentially for $1. That's what finally got me to actually consider getting Game Pass, and I've had it ever since because it's fucking phenomenal. It's the best thing ever. It's like, you pay, what is it, $15 I think a month, and you get like quality good games. Like, it's a huge library of like proper good games. Like, there's Grand Grand Theft Auto 5 on it, which I know is kind of older now, but like it's stuff like that. It's like proper, it's not indie stuff. There's indie stuff as well, but it's not just indie stuff. There's your AAA games, and it's kind of cool. It's impressive. But I think that movies are also going to be headed into this direction where it's more focused on streaming, and it's going to be more and more niche, and it's going to be more and more curated for the viewer, I guess. And I think that we're going to get more genre type of ones. I think that more and more companies, especially like creators and all that kind of stuff, like A24 and that kind of thing, like, I feel like they're either going to team up with more streaming services and that kind of thing, or they're going to make their own streaming service. I wouldn't be surprised if we get an A24 streaming service, you know, in 10 years when they've got enough films out. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if we get more stuff like that, if we get a Blumhouse streaming service maybe, where maybe not everything will be made by them, but where, you know, they'll collaborate with different horror companies and all that kind of stuff. And I think that that is definitely the future of film. I think that is going to be probably the norm. And in saying that, like, I honestly, with the fucking COVID-19 and stuff this year, I fear for the future of cinemas, I have to say. I have to admit. It pains me to say, I don't want to be saying it. I hate the idea of cinemas being gone. But I do think that, I don't think they'll ever completely die, but I do think that they're going to be more and more obscure. They're going to be more of a, what's the word? Like, it's for the fans, I guess. It's for the people that really want to go there. But this is just a guess, and I don't super know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stop talking now, because this is kind of rambly. If you think I've got some lucid thoughts in here that make a bit of sense and actually are getting somewhere, let me know. Tell me what you think about the topic. And yeah, do things like comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you for viewing this video with your eyes.